welcome to another episode of One Step Further, and I am Justin Arnold. And in case this is the first time you're tuning into this podcast, we are a faith-based podcast where we do essentially that. We bring people on here to talk about subject matters to hopefully bring your life a step further, whether it be personally, professionally, spiritually, who knows. And I brought in my good friend, like I said, John Crawford. He's a man of many talents. I used all of them. I utilize it for pretty much everything. I mean, he's teaching me Kung Fu. He's my chiropractor. We do some acupuncture together. Plus, he's just a really neat, down-to-earth, Chris Farley looking dude, and he's okay with me saying that. Because if you don't know this guy, think of like the Kung Fu-ish doctor version of Chris Farley. So anyways, yeah, right?
I received that.
So there you go. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about yourself that I didn't already mention, and then we'll kind of get this ball rocking.
Cool, man. Cool, yeah. So my name is Dr. John Crawford. As Justin so lovingly mentioned, I do a lot of fun things. I do Kung Fu, I do chiropractic, I do acupuncture, also do a little bit of spiritual healing and sort of shamanic healing, if you will, hypnotherapy as well, and I'm an empowerment coach. So I'm a big fan of healing in general. So sometimes I'm healing people on the physical level, of course. I learned a lot of techniques that can also heal emotionally and spiritually and things like that too. So I've found a deep spiritual love affair about 10 years ago, and it's brought me closer to my actualization, or how I can support people and help people out.
Yeah, so what are you doing now currently besides, of course, you still got a very successful acupuncture, chiropractic business. I utilize them for Kung Fu. What are you doing currently right now to help people out besides those things?
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question. So I've been, for about 3 years, I've been on a deep spiritual dive and training with very powerful spiritual teachers to heal with communication. So how that might look and how it might present sort of practically for us is, people have their stuff coming up. And I don't know if you've noticed, but it's been a relatively stressful year.
What's going on?
Yeah. There's a new thing going around. Yeah, so when people are experiencing, pain, and I work with pain in a lot of different contexts. Obviously, I'm treating people with headaches, back pain, neck pain, what have you. But I'm also looking at sort of what we call like coaching or processing of issues. So people come up and they say, oh my God, my husband's been doing this thing and he's constantly talking and it's bringing up all these triggers of times when I was abused or this. And so it's like,
isn't that interesting? I get that powerful. Even here in a personal training and a gym scenario. Go ahead though.
Yeah. So what I appreciate about it is what we can do is find ways where we're giving away our power. So I'll work with someone and just say, oh, this person's doing this thing to me again and again. I'm like, well, why are you in that position still that they can do that? Like, so we create boundaries or healthy, something of the like for that context to support them. So what we want to do is, as I said, is heal with communication and give people power back and give people more choice and possibility and opportunities. And I'll use different forms of modalities, hypnotherapy, shamanism, and spirituality. But for the most part, what we're doing is just getting people really like present to what's going on and then what they want.
Yeah, let's talk about that trauma. I mean, so for those who don't know, I briefly have mentioned on some previous, but I've been writing a book over the last year called Purpose Through Pain, and right now we're actually this is the week we're going to be submitting it to manuscript and editing. But that's some of the things we talk about is I'm going to be talking about childhood trauma, childhood pain, and you brought across that because it's something I realized through me and like how it attaches to the body, lynches to the body, and so I think that's still very new for people in the general public to really still kind of grasp and understand. And like I said, I see that kind of stuff here. Like, I'll go down my roadmap real quickly and then talk about yours. But because I would love for people to hear from your perspective. But from my perspective, I connect with people, and in my industry, personal training and fitness and health and nutrition. It's like let's state the obvious. I want to lose weight. I want to get healthier.
Absolutely.
People don't. No one ever comes to me and is like, or very rarely, hey, I know that this pain I'm dealing with inside and my overweightness is because I was abused as a child. No one does that. No. But like essentially, even through mine, why this has become such a therapeutic environment for me is because what I find at the surface level of almost every client, their reasons why they're being here, weight loss or mobility or pain or whatever, all comes from something way deeper. Not only things that motivate them, but the reasons that got them there. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of building relationships here, because without building relationships, we would never get to that reason. So, anyways, point of the story is, so people, once we get to that, they're able to lose weight faster. They're able to sustain it. People who are dealing with like pain from head to toe, from again my scope, building muscle, building stability, building out the imbalances of the body.
Right.
By getting to that, they connect those pieces from those painful issues, and through proper techniques and mobilities and also that, and building relationships, and then also letting that out in this atmosphere, those pains are gone. And they're moving better, feeling better, and ultimately living better. One of those things I say.
Yeah,
so
right.
in your scope, going along that, like, please share like what your experiences are, and maybe go as deep as you want, but how like the pain and trauma and those things are connected to the body. I didn't know we talked about this today, but I'm glad we are.
I know. And it's always so great because you do have such a background, a rich background, and you do so much great work here. And I'm sure you've seen, man. And I'm sure you've seen it. Like when you get through to someone and you break through and their physicality comes through, then all the other emotional things start to unravel and open. And then it's a whole new can of worms, but within the context of how you can support people with nutrition and healing and movement. You're a master of that movement-based stuff. That allows people to process. So we talk about that in our Kung Fu training. It's like, we're just doing motions with our arms and moving around, but we're releasing and opening and closing, and same stuff as like yoga in general. Is we want to open and close the body, move the body. But why do we move it? So we develop a union and a connection. Ultimately, it comes down to, like you had spoken to, is that there are a lot of things stored in the body. And in my scope, what I see is like there's stuff where old stuff, old trauma, old bullshit, for lack of a better word.
It's all right. And people, it's you're real, you're human. Dude.
Yeah, and so when that BS comes out, for example, it's in the body and it needs to be released. And so we have processes that, that's, the physicality is a great one. It's really the best. I start with that every time. Like when you want to get processing and working with someone who's going through a lot, you want to get them moving a little bit so they're not so much in their head. Then eventually you can start to work and open into a new space. And that's I see sort of like a pyramid in my mindset of health. So there's like perhaps like spiritual, energetic, and then there's perhaps mental, then emotional, then physical. Now the physical is at the bottom of that list because it's going from top down, if you will, with this visual, but the physical is also the foundation. Like if you don't have your body, what do you have? Like you don't have consciousness, you don't have your ability to love and serve and be you. So important, obviously this is the most important, so it's the groundwork. And then we work into higher levels of thing, and it's a little more subtle, what I've seen in my experience, but if you can support someone in a very spiritual or energetic or mental space, then it starts to have effects downstream. But it takes time, and it takes a lot of courage too, to be as open and vulnerable to go into some of this trauma. Like people have gone through so much.
Well, like especially as men, like that's essentially why I wrote this book, because the stuff that I've been through, I know a lot of men have, but no one's. Even when I went to recently, like I've been meeting with my publishers and coming up with book cover ideas. So I obviously went to the section that I thought my book would be in, which deals with like trauma and pain and rape and sexual assault and abuse, and then also the self-help, because it's an intermingling processes of the book.
Absolutely.
And what I was reading is like, I didn't see one male author. It was like, I mean, I'm sure there are, but it's so rare. A lot of them are female. So it's like, man, this just proved even more that like why I needed to write this book. Because there's like, again, when we're holding on to all this, what are we really holding on to, and what are we actually limiting ourselves? Because as men, what man, raise your hand, I can't see it, but raise your hand if you don't want to maximize your potential as a man, like, to be the best man. And then we could go down the roadmap of like, what is a man? But anyways,
I got that.
I digress. But like who doesn't want to be that? And like, what I've known by bringing it to the forefront, especially writing this book, has been therapeutic, but by bringing it, how much better and more open I can live life. Like even pain goes away, not only physical but mental. Like you don't feel locked down, but you don't realize that like by just ignoring it or pushing it away and almost forgetting it, it's still in your subconscious of sorts. And it's like, so like I remember spending some time with a physical therapist, and he had spent time with I think a neurosurgeon, brain surgeon. Anyway, somebody that was very well knowledgeable in the subject matter, and they talked about that. They talked about like, and we talked about it. It was like he's literally worked with clients, but it took a few sessions until they kind of admitted to some of these trauma, especially childhood.
Totally.
Was that they he was doing like, I don't know, it was a pain somewhere in the person's back, but it was like he was doing all his techniques and couldn't figure it out. But by getting them to open up about their trauma and their that issue, well, the pain went away. And it just like shows how like this stuff wherever can attach to parts of the body. You guys are probably thinking, what's up with these two weird hippies here? But it just shows, think of it this way, we're all interconnected, right? From head to toe. Absolutely. And from memories even, right? So
absolutely.
it's crazy. I didn't even think we'd talk about this, but the point is, if you're dealing with anything, go see somebody like him, and then if you want to build some muscle, come see me. No,
but it's all connected. I appreciate your insights and what you shared there. It's true that there's not been a lot of support for the masculine to express emotion, and so what I see too often,
real men cry is something I like to tell my son.
Yeah, good. That's brilliant.
Well, so dive down this thing is like something I learned is like, in my world, like, you want to balance. You don't want to overtrain. You don't want to overwork out, and you need rest and recovery. So you learn about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems. If we're going over your head, just you need balance. Like, you need rest and you need working out. You can't just have too much rest and too much working out. Right. You need time to yourself. You need time with people. Everything. It's ebb and flow. That's right. But the point is, like, crying is a parasympathetic activity. Yeah. It's like getting a massage or sitting in a hot tub.
It's true.
So
it's
think about like 20 or however many years of not getting a massage or not getting any balance. It builds up. I mean, these are some things I touch in my book, and
it's good you're doing that with your son too.
Well, I mean, there's a point. Like, I don't want to like boo-hooing all the time over everything, but
you got to live a workable life and be practical.
But something I've learned for those that don't know, my wife is black, being married to an African American woman. I don't know if this is always the case, but something she expressed, like, same idea, be tough, don't show weakness, as a black woman, right? Yeah. And so, like, we've had to even teach our daughters that it's okay, and like, it's totally messed with the way I grew up, the way my wife grew up, but we know that what we've learned, that we're limiting our children. Yeah. So anyways, sorry we went off on a tangent here, but I think this is where the conversation was going. I just wanted to lead with it. So that's why I brought this guy. He's a man of many talents, many knowledge. Anything else you want to chat about on that one?
Well, there was something I wanted to touch on, and I wanted to speak to how I think it's really powerful that you're supporting your children and to be ways to have their power in their youth, because often I'm cleaning up a lot of messes from when they were kids. Like, there's a lot of pain I see when they were 5 years old, and their mom said one thing about the way they looked in the dress, and all of a sudden this woman now for 45 years carries guilt and shame about her body. And
so that I found, I had a person I knew who something similar, and what they did, so the grandmother would take the daughter out because of what the mother did, and for ice cream, so this daughter connected every time she feels pain to eat ice cream, which turned into her obesity. So we had to like break all those layers down just to finally, because like she correlated to feel good, I gotta eat. She didn't say it until she said it out loud, but like it's like that's how interconnected abuse and pain is to these kinds of things. And it's like, I could tell her to eat this and not that. I could get her in here and train her real hardcore, but until we kind of dissect and break away and break down into these layers and start having these open conversations while we're training, and you're like, what the hell is going on in that gym? Right. But like, you have to, like, we have to build relationships in this world, and then we have to, by building relationships, we can open up more. But funny thing you said about children during this whole process of writing a book, something I learned is like, so mine happened before the age of 10 for several years. Sure. And what I learned is like, especially before the age of 10, how that rewires you essentially.
Oh no, totally.
Rewires you completely. So like the way you react to trauma, or even being scared, or say like roller coaster rides, or like somebody jumping out, or like for me, like here's where I'm a little vulnerable, like being tickled. It scared me. It freaked me out. I got my defenses up when like tickling is just like, if I were to do that, like I hope I should ask, I guess. You're good. But like most people laugh, right? Like, what's your problem with tickling? But use your imagination. We're not going to go down my rabbit hole. We're talking to John today, but like that's the thing. That's like in all these things, but I didn't realize, because of my da-da-da-da that happened when I was 6, da-da-da is like, but until I start being open and honest, then memories start coming back. And then, for me, it's been about like forgiving myself, knowing it wasn't my fault. And essentially the biggest thing for me was actually forgiving my abusers, which is really probably one of the hardest things. And that was probably the biggest thing. And I realized how much, it wasn't about them, it was about me. And like, so again, we're going down this like psychological rabbit hole here, but
well, it's a service. It's how we help ourselves.
But this is how, like, if you're dealing with some chronic pain or some chronic issues or obesity or any issues, like there are some physical things that this amazing man can do, but there's also things from a therapeutic. And my biggest thing, and there isn't one way or the other, you want to hit everything from multifacets.
Exactly. Right? I was going to say, and if you are experiencing this, go to your therapist, go to your cognitive behavioral therapist, find a psychologist, whatever it is that suits you, because I mean, I found for me it was a spiritual dive into processing of issues, what we call it, like dropping our BS. But it looks at this. It looks at all these old times where you feel the vulnerability from something that happened. And it brings you so much power and joy when you can get through that and let it out. So what it'll look like practically when I'm working with someone, for example, in this context, is we'll kind of dive in, and then all of a sudden stuff will come through either through some of my connections with the mystical, like clairvoyance, metaphysical, and things, I'm feeling energy off of someone. Or it could also just be they're sharing, and then all of a sudden stuff starts falling out, and all of a sudden more comes through, and they just, like you said, perhaps it was stuff that they had kind of repressed. And so once you find a secure and safe space, and I encourage you to find that, whatever it looks like for you, but once you find that, you can be vulnerable and open, and then once that's out, it's better out than in, and you felt it, and you've experienced it, then you can create something new in its wake.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to just know that if it wasn't your fault, it's not your fault. Like, it's not your fault for what somebody else did to you.
That's right.
Or,
and kids often take the blame. They say, oh, I was messed up. I did something wrong. I did this thing.
I see
when
it.
It was never the kid's fault.
I see it. I saw it in myself. I've seen it in other kids, and it's like I see it grow into an adulthood. And like, it literally, you just got to bring it to the forefront. And you got to, like, you can't just keep it hiding and think it's not there, because it's always going to be there until you bring it to the forefront.
And my teachers talk about it like there's a 3-year-old inside of us running us all.
Isn't that crazy?
You know, so that's the one that, we have adult versions, and we have learned things, and we have a little bit more technical terms, but really there's a 3-year-old that's in an emotional body. It's like the second chakra, if you will. And so that's powerful, but it's also
chakra.
If you get, wheel means wheel, right, in Indian terms. But if you get...
Yeah, because some people are like, what's chakra?
Right.
They've heard it, like, what's this hippie talking about?
Yeah, and so it's cool, because I'm training and I'm getting a master's degree in transpersonal psychology. So we're looking at people like Dr. Bruce Limpton, who
That's
says...
so cool.
From
I think
5
I'm
to...
gonna be hanging out with this guy a little bit more lately.
If you look at it, from periods 4 to 6, you're in a space of basically a trance state. So you're watching and observing, and most of our communications comes through physical. 90% comes through physical. So kids are just sponges looking at what's happening. So we're processing really deep generational problems that have been passed on.
Isn't that crazy?
My dad, my mom and dad, they were born in the 40s. They didn't get these tools. Like, this wasn't happening. This wasn't hip to talk about chakras or whatever. But like, also to talk about this inner child. Like, the inner child wounding is present in almost all these deeper things. You see it like with these chronic people that have chronic, like weight gain and weight loss, like this yo-yoing effect. There's some other fundamental aspect.
Well, you always hear, genetics, but I've changed
Both.
my genetics. You can change your genetics within one generation. They just assume because they're that, like, and that's where I struggle with that. Like, it was funny. I just had a deja vu moment. Like, we already did this interview, so that's on a whole thing. But I was like, why does this feel like familiar?
Yeah.
But man, I lost my train of thought there for a sec. But yeah, so like, oh man, I forgot what I was gonna say on this.
Well,
but it's just fascinating. And so, like, for those that are like listening to this and like, wait, where did this podcast go? The point is, like, this is why I brought him on here. There are different components. Oh, this is where I was going to say. So if you're doing just therapy, great, but there's got to be other ways. And the reason why I say that is because they've done strength conditioning and yoga studies, strength conditioning specific. I'm not saying, so just in case you didn't hear that, I didn't say working out.
Right.
They did these studies on lifting weights, strength and conditioning, and yoga, and the combination of those, and coupled with therapy. And they did a comparison of like this versus that. So therapy versus strength and conditioning, therapy alone, therapy in combination, strength conditioning and yoga by themselves. And what they found was people who are dealing with like depression, anxiety, and mental health issues like that sorts were on medication or not, or just dealing with some of these. But I don't know if they did bipolar or not. But the point is, some of these mental health disorders, what they found is that yoga and strength conditioning helped every single one of them that were doing yoga or strength conditioning, and if they were on medication, they either decreased the amount or totally got off it altogether. They were doing like depression, anxiety. You can Google it later. Those in therapy alone, no change. Those with therapy and yoga and strength conditioning, huge change. So again, I'm not saying don't ever just do therapy, but I'm saying start coupling it with some form of movement and meditative movement. In fact, like if you train here at Flexxmp, like I've combined those worlds to make like strength conditioning into a meditative practice, because I'm big on breath, as you know. He's big on breath with Kung Fu. And like yours could be like Kung Fu with therapy. Like, it could be lifting weights and doing bodybuilding and talking to somebody. It could be yoga and talking to somebody. But I always say, hit it at all heads.
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
I think that's a good way to wrap up this section of this podcast. Is like hit it from as many angles as you can. Like for example, if somebody comes in with a shoulder, you're not just doing acupuncture, right?
No, try to find anything that'll support them.
Right.
And that's what I appreciate having several degrees, and like, it's not just this is the right way, this is the only way. It's like it's like whatever they needed. So as a practitioner, as a healer, I don't see myself as locked into one. I see this person could probably use a little of this, little of that, little of that. So my teachers now are encouraging me to integrate. I have specializations, right? A chiropractor, martial artist, do a lot of, human design or human potential training, spirituality and coaching and NLP. But they're like, figure out between which one is appropriate for that person. And that's what I think is the patient or the client wins when we have people that are open to all
and
of
also never give up, man. Never set limits. Like if you're struggling where you're at right now, like he just talked at the beginning of this podcast, like, man, it's been probably a rough year. It has been, and like there are solutions, and it may not be the obvious, but just know it's not just one thing. There's not like people come to me like, oh man, my hip's tight. What do I do? No one ever says it like this, but this is how I hear it. What's the magical stricture going to fix me in like 5 seconds? Like no one ever says it like that. That's kind of like what I hear sometimes, because it's like people like have like a tight hip flexor, very common. People have tight hip flexors, so they're expecting some magical stretch. Oh, how can I get rid of tight hip? And they've been dealing with like 5 or 10 years, right?
Sure.
What I found is a combination of both mobility, stretching, static and dynamic, but also a lot of strength and stability and balance work. So we hit it from all heads, and voila, even a combination with somebody like this guy where we can get rid of some of the pain so they can do some better moving in here.
Exactly.
Anyways, hit it from as many heads as possible. Be open-minded to some things that maybe your mom or dad wouldn't suggest or somebody else. For example, I just got a guy who went to a doctor, had back surgery because he was having severe back issues, and then told never do half the lifts he's doing now, and he's deadlifting like 345 for like 5 reps, and no back issues, and stronger and fitter, and he's lost like 50 pounds. And so it's like, you just always have the mindset of maybe we'll see, let's try, and
stay open.
It's
so it's a good point.
If you're cool with it, let's shift.
Please.
Okay, and hopefully you got some nuggets from that. If not, listen to it again and share it with a friend. But man, so I bet at the beginning people were like, wait, you said this guy, I haven't gotten past. I'm gonna have to listen to all that again because I ain't got past you. Wait, Kung Fu, acupuncture, and Chiro. Like how? Like where did that all begin? And how are you those three? And because I already know the answers to this, but I know people are like, there's an interconnection to it all.
There is, yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think that's what I would love. Just kind of share how it all happened, when it all began, what was first, with chicken or egg.
Yeah, right. Fair. So I'll do my best to be swift here.
I'll ask you again if I have to. So what came first?
What came first? So I remember I was a senior in high school, and I was like shadowing different nurses, doctors, PAs. I was doing like clinical rotations, and I was figuring out what I wanted to do. I knew I was getting injured in sports, and I had to get better quickly. So I was like, how do I heal this body faster? So I remember that I started following, and I loved basically the emergency room. So I became an EMT in college, and I loved it, and I was going to medical school, and I was in the back of the ambulance. Now this is like 2008 when they were just throwing Vicodin at anybody that walked, and I was like, why are we doing this? Like I was like, this guy came back in the ambulance 2 weeks ago to fix, like, why don't we look at his shoulder? Someone's gonna look at his shoulder. So I remember just being like, the model back then, it was really terrible, and they've all admitted to this now, like pharmaceuticals with that system is not working for pain control, for example. So other great needs for it, and as an EMT, I can respect that. But I just kept seeing that, and I was like, I don't want to go to medical school. I don't want to give drugs to people. I want to find the natural purpose, the natural way to go to the root of the problem and then fix that. So I personally I've always felt that Mother Nature has a lot to offer us. And so I started looking at more natural, conservative, holistic. And then I found chiropractic, which was cool because I wanted to learn about the body. Like, I love the body. I think the body's so cool. It's our vessel for consciousness.
It is. I mean, that's exactly why I got in this. I'm amazed by the body and what it's capable of. And
if I was a car, I'd want to be a mechanic because I want to know how we work. You know what I mean? Like,
I always said, man, if somebody could figure out, like, you know how we can just take a car in for a tune-up? Like, if we could, like, get the ultimate tune-up for the human body, that person would be a gajillionaire.
Part of what I'm up to now too is like working in all aspects of healthcare.
So we're going to talk after this, and
we'll figure it out. But yeah, like that led me to finding chiropractic, which again I said is natural, holistic, conservative. I didn't want to go to medical school. I didn't want to give drugs. I wanted to find the natural way. And I started training in Kung Fu.
That's like me. That's what you can. If you haven't figured this out, that's why him and I are so connected.
I know we have so much in common. I went to Kung Fu.
We look alike too.
That's right. You see it? You see a little bit of the red hair. So I remember I was in my first semester first trimester at chiropractic college. This is medical school, and I was like, all of a sudden it's going 4 times faster than undergrad. And I was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I start to have overwhelm. What occurs to me is a sensation of overwhelm. And then I went to Kung Fu that night, and we did 1,000 punches. So 1,000 punches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Why
1,
not?
2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a chain punch. So
Not 100, 1,000, not even 500.
Let's do 1,000. We like to do a lot in martial arts, because then you get the ego out of it, and then you're just doing it, and then you become that movement. So what happens was, I'm done with 1,000 punches, and I'm just like, all right, I'll just go study. Like I left the worry behind with the physicality, which I'm sure you see all day.
Oh yeah, I mean
here.
that's why like sometimes I'm okay like with that. Sometimes I might throw a weight like on purpose.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I might. That's why I've got like things to throw and hit. I got hammers and maces
let
and balls.
it out, because once it's out there, and then all of a
I
sudden
go
you can
cry afterward.
Yeah, man.
No, but like
it's releasing. It's really, we call it sweat of the heart.
I mean, we talked about it, but like raise your hand again. One of these raise your hand moments. If you haven't like felt better after a good cry or a good like punch the wall
all day,
don't hit a person, please.
Yep.
You know.
First, do no harm.
But I'm going to backtrack. Like, it's funny that you said that, because it made me think, like, too, like, something I've let with my kids do is play fight.
Yeah.
Not to the point that they're hurting each other and they're
Totally.
like, getting cuts and bruises, but, like, to the point that, like, they all, when they play fight, they don't fight that day. Like, and I started looking up about it. It's like,
I can see that.
There's actually, like, some research behind, like, play fighting and releasing the tension. It's actually good therapy. Like, there's some studies done over long periods of time where, like, kids who didn't play fight when they were younger and, like, how they turned out not so well. So,
because we have these emotions
like,
underneath.
Like serial killers or, like, people who are murderers, like, again, there's a lot of things they might have in common, like being crazy maybe, but like one of the things that they noticed was like they weren't allowed to show emotion when they were younger. They weren't fighting and playing when they were younger. They weren't, so it goes back to all that, like, cry it out, punch it out, find out what works for you, lift it out.
I know, it's true, man. Like, that's what I've seen. I think you're a great dad in the way that you show up for them. You figure out what they might need and what they
It's a process.
Support them.
But again, this goes back to, like, trauma. Like, he says I'm a great dad, which I appreciate it. It's all the great experiment of parenting. We'll find out when they're, like, adults. But I think part of it is also, like, this is my perspective. People, I hear it all the time. I hear from my own brothers, like, I hear it, like, they hate on their this and their mom and their dad, and I could easily do that. I went down that, but I realized, if I didn't have the experiences, I wouldn't, and learn from those experiences, then I wouldn't be where I am as a father and a husband.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of weird about it. Maybe weird is the wrong term, but it's like,
you have your unique path.
Even if you have a great upbringing, it's still be very aware of what was great about it. And if you have a bad upbringing, be very aware of what was bad and change the future. Essentially.
Your kids don't have to experience what you experienced.
Exactly. And which makes you wonder, it's like, wait, am I doing it?
Right. Well, when in the play fight analogy you described, I think that's really brilliant. Like, I was a coach for 3 to 12-year-olds for 6 years, and like siblings, it's really challenging for them to really hurt them. like they just get each other, and there's a sort of rapport and connection. They might really annoy each other, but they're never gonna like break their arm or something. But they will do stuff that will engage and play, and then all of a sudden they've released it, and then it's out.
So that's something I am doing. Like, besides just doing the things that I do, I explain it to my kids, and I think they get it a little bit. Maybe not my 5-year-old, but I repeat my explanations over and over again, and like a broken record, because it's repetitive behavior. So, like, for example, I will explain like why I allow them to play fight. I will explain, some of the things that I do with them, and why we're going to nature every day. Like, I explain, like, so that, like, and I even said, hey, when you're parents, just remember this. This is very important. And I explained, like, I didn't get this when I was a kid. Here's why. Here's why I want to encourage you.
And you're doing a great job in that sense of how to communicate it, because like that lets them feel heard, appreciated, understood. And I don't know, personally, like what I've seen within the context of that inner child healing stuff is like when the masculine is in integrity, meaning they say and do what they say they're going to do, then the inner child feels secure and safety, and the feminine feels safety. We both have the masculine and feminine within us, you know what I mean? But like deep down, if you're in a masculine, you say, this is what we're going to do and this is why we're doing it, and you go and you follow up, everyone around you will respect you and feel that love and feel that nourishment and that leadership.
Isn't that crazy? Like, just that energy, like how you were just talking about everyone will feel that. And like, that's so true. Like, I'm one of those ones that, like, I'm always pretty much positive. I made shirts here that say "Always a good day, some are just great." Is what I instill in my. Well, it's true. Like that's just perspective. Like it's
say
about
it again,
always a good day, some are just great.
I love that.
So it's like, and it's just perspective because it's like that's what I instill in my kids. Like because I try to have them look at life in moments, not in days, weeks, months, and years.
Right.
So if you're not understanding what I'm saying, it's like how many times have you said? Because I was guilty of it a long time ago. Like, man, that was such a bad day, or that was such a bad week, and it may not sound like, well, what's the big deal? Like it adds up, and then you start looking at that whole entire day. But like I count my wins at the end of the day. Like for example, from an entrepreneurial, if you're an entrepreneur, listen to this. Like at the end of the day, like if I just look at, oh man, I lost this, I lost that, I didn't make as much money, I didn't make it, or whatever, whatever your losses were the day, but you didn't look at some of your wins. Like they could be small, but they could. Everything's about momentum, so those wins could add up. But if you have this perspective of bad day, bad day, bad day, bad week, God, I can't wait to this weekend or whatever, man, you're really wasting a lot of like positivity in your life, and like life should be enjoyed.
You lose opportunities there. Like we talk about it in the context of coaching. You would say you collapse at extinction. The whole day doesn't have to be bad.
You collapse at extinction, man.
A distinction,
So I thought you said collapse at extinction.
Oh,
no. You extinct at collapse.
There is an extinction. But when a collapse distinction is when you say my day was terrible, right? Because this one thing happened at 10 a.m. But what you're describing is looking at individual wins. Like maybe at 11 you had a really good lift and you felt really good. At 12 you went and had a great lunch with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and like in that space you're finding gratitude, and then also in that space you're starting to shift your biochemistry. So it happens in the mind. It happens with the mental choices we make. But what I'm saying is, like, if you just say, oh, this day was terrible because this happened, you've collapsed a distinction because you said every part of that day was. When in reality it was that one experience which wasn't as comfortable.
Well, like, not everything needs to be big. Here we go. I'll tell you a win that I had yesterday that I didn't realize until I was journaling. I'm a big proponent of journaling and writing, and I'll put a free link to my journal below. But shameless plug, but it's free, so it's not really a plug, right? I did that because writing is huge, getting it up. But like one of my wins yesterday is something I've been putting off. It was like I called my cell phone provider to renegotiate my bill, which is going to save me like $20 a month.
Right.
It's something I've been putting off. Is that a huge win? Yeah, I'm saving money, but it was like, is it really, like, it's not like I just got like, $1,000 in the bank account, but over time it was like,
it turns into $200 in a year.
But like that, like that actually got me excited journaling. But hey, wait, that was a win.
Yeah, it is.
Write it down. Like I took the time to finally call my cell phone company, which ended up saving me $20 a month. So
I like to think of it too. Like I'm someone who I call even like the negligible or kind of I call them wins. Like I'm a pretty positive, inspirational person as I hope to be, at least that's my opinion, but that's my truth. But like what I like about that is it allows me to enjoy myself and have this momentum you speak to. Like we want to find this fulfillment in our daily lives with the little things, and meditation is what brought me to that space right around.
I think and I think there's for a second we're talking about joy and like what is joy? Like I think every day can mean joy, but I think joy gets construed with like living on the beach and laying out. No, I think we need to be giving something back to society, a service, helping, loving. Like life is hard, life is full of work. Like you should be challenging yourself, because if you don't, like it's on my wire, if you don't challenge yourself, you don't change yourself. Like right over here it says, do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Right. So like you change with challenges. Like I was better for the challenge in my life, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it all the way. So like, I just want to be clear on that. Joy doesn't mean like vacationing. I think, like, especially nowadays, we get painted this picture. Like this is what I heard on like K-Love, the Christian radio station. They were interviewing like younger people. They did a survey of like younger generation. I don't remember the age group, but younger. Like you're thinking high school, college. I'm guessing because it was before they had careers. Right. And you know what the number one career, like what people want to do? Guess. Blew my mind.
Pro athlete.
YouTube star.
Oh, they want to be,
Which is nothing wrong with that.
Right.
The YouTube, which is nothing wrong with that per se, but like what I was like, and I think because they think, oh man, I can become a millionaire super easy, just sitting in front of a camera, and that's where my joy is. So again, like this goes down a rabbit hole of like what joy is, and we don't have to necessarily,
Well, it's a great philosophical question.
But it's just like what I'm saying is, you should enjoy every day. For example, like I find moments like at work, but I like when I do a hard lift, which going into is like, oh, this scares me a little bit, but then I find joy because of it, But I think you should have joy innately without having to find other things too. But like, for example, like one thing that I made a commitment to was dedicate at least 45 minutes of outdoor activity with my kids every single day. And that's something to look forward to. And that's joy to me as well. So, but it takes work. It takes work to carve out that part of my day as an entrepreneur to like, so there's balance, you know, that we talked about earlier. So,
and I wanted to bring attention to what you said there too. And this is for everyone at home. You can think about it like growth or comfort. You have to pick one. Now, it may not be the most convenient to carve out 45 minutes. You might have things and activities and things you got to do. But when you do, you build something in a connection
said the right thing,
with them. Like you're building a connection. Like I
don't think joy is always comfort, but joy can be in growth.
Yeah, and joy can be, and I'm thinking of the word even particularly philosophically here, if you feel me out, is like enjoyment, like being in the experience of that. And it doesn't have to mean that you're having a blissed out time and it's all, you know,
some of our best memories that we still talk about was like some of the, like for example, I think I may have talked about it on a podcast, but I'll talk about it again. It was like we went hiking at this large, it was an all day hike. It's called Indian Head and Rainbow Falls, so some gorgeous falls, but it was a trek. I mean, it was like an all day thing. And when we get to the best view on the top of Indian Head Mountain, I don't know, it's you know, it's not one of these highest peaks, but just to go through everything, it's a long hike because you see, like, I want to say, like about 5 different waterfalls. You see gorgeous views. You get to this peak where it's just like this horseshoe of the water and the mountains on the side. It's just this gorgeous view. We get to it. The wind starts to pick up as we start heading down. We knew it might sprinkle. Downpour. On the top of a peak. And I've got 3 kids and my wife, and my kids' ages at the time were 4, 7, and 10. They're all a year older now, so we got 5, 8, and 11. And I tell you this because that was another, it never let up until we actually got to the vehicle. It was about 2.5 hours in a downpour. Sounds horrible. You're probably like, what? But as soon as we got the vehicle, we all laughed about it, and we still talk about it because it's one of these things. We all did something, you know, there's these adventures and trips that, you might remember as long as you took pictures, but that we don't even need pictures for.
That's in the heart.
And I'm saying there's joy to be found in this torrential downpour because I remember putting Ava on my shoulder and we were just being on my shoulder and her holding on to Daddy tight. I remember there were moments, even Jalen wrote about it to his teacher. Of course, from an aid perspective, I bet somebody read and probably think, man, that dad's horrible. But no, but like it's one of these things. Like it was hard work. It was a struggle, but it was like we found joy and love through the whole thing. And I think like that an experience, right?
It's an experience. Exactly.
So I mean, I guess that's what I'm getting at. It's not necessarily, not to say that laying on the beach can't be joyful too, but I think it's just always like what you look at life, you know, and how you dive into it. Man, these things that we've already talked about, not totally unexpected. That's why I love this podcast. Like, I don't like doing scripted. Like people always like, I've been on scripted ones before, which is fine. I just, you know, I like bringing people on here and just having a normal conversation with a mic attached to us.
I'm grateful that you've invited me here. And one thing I wanted to touch upon too, and I'm just so, like, you reminded me of a couple of things we talk about in Kung Fu. It's like, we have this concept we have this concept in Kung Fu. It's called tasting the bitterness. Now, you're in these positions that could feel very challenging to you. Your legs are being taxed. Your mind's telling your body, we can't do this anymore. We got to stop. But what do you get when you push and persevere through? You're not going to get injured like in the space of some of these techniques and things we're doing, but what it will do is generate will. And so then you can sit through, because I'm sure most people that are watching this have an experience to know that deep down, life can be challenging. And so while we have positivity and inspiration and gratitude, there are times that push us and we get stretched. Now, in that experience that you had spoke to so beautifully, is like, that was a memory because it did something. It was a little bit more challenging. It was a little uncomfortable. But now you guys bonded in that space, I'm assuming. Like,
we so bonded. Like, and it's one of our best memories that we have.
They're going to remember that for the rest of their lives.
Like, not to say we wouldn't remember Disney World, but man, I think a friend of mine was telling me about this recently. He was telling me, like, they just took a trip to Disney World, but they take little trips. They didn't spend a whole week there like some families do. They spent a few days. They did this because it was more economical. And then we looked at, like, that's kind of how we vacation to take trips. We do like 3-4 day getaways so we can have more adventures. Some cost, some don't. But like, we're not. He said he saw a father screaming and yelling as a kid. And what he saw in that was the pain and the trauma the father was creating based off the expectations that the father set on here. Think about, I worked all year to be able to pay for this vacation because we never take anything, and you're not enjoying it at the level that you should be enjoying it. Now, he didn't say it out loud, but I think if he would have, he would have maybe not been so hard. Again, I wasn't there, but it's just, and we've all been guilty. We all fall short. I'm not going to say that, but I remember these experiences growing up. My parents, we never really took vacations, and we did. It was like one big one every couple of years, and I remember my dad losing it if we didn't. And so I connected with that story he told me, because it's like, it makes you think like, and it makes you think like in these moments, like I think we have to invest all this to think that we have to do this to create joy, but it's not what you think it is. It doesn't have to be that $1 million trip. It doesn't have to be that yacht boat. It doesn't have to be that house,
be an
that
apple
car.
On a walk with your dad. Like that's joy to me when I think he left.
So what we're getting at, I think, it doesn't have to be a thing at all, or a place at all.
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset and who you're with.
Yeah, and
you're with.
If I could convey any value to anyone watching, like, we find the joy in the storm. Like, that's part of what we as humans we can do. We can find enjoyment in the struggle, and like little things can be as simple. I think it's the little things in life. Like what I've learned through my meditation and my studies and spirituality is like really taking appreciation for what you have, having that gratitude deeply, authentically, make it feel good. But also, like, I think about it like my walks with my dad. Like, we would grow up, it was just, he'd cut up an apple, we'd go on a walk, my twin sister and I would go on a walk with my dad every day. And like, that's the stuff you remember. He passed away 5 years ago, and like, that's the stuff you recall
because
deep
you
down.
bonded all that. Yeah, like that's what I'm looking at. I'm creating memories every day.
Isn't it nice to know that these connections of what you saw with your parents and what you're doing with your kids is
yeah, and so I want to set that staple and set some high expectations, and it's those things that matter, like, the relationships we build. I mean, I don't know how many older clients that I've talked to, and the things that they wish they did more of, or the regrets they have, or their favorite memories, whatever, is always about relationships, like who and what, like. So this is something like my wife.
But they're not on their deathbed saying, "Oh, I wish I didn't."
No, but like I think that's the number one deathbed thing. Like,
well, I was going to joke. Is like, I wish I didn't take so many vacations. Like, no one said that ever.
People did say, "I wish I didn't work so hard."
Yep.
Like, what did all this money mean if I couldn't enjoy it? Yep. Joy is everybody's chasing joy, love, and peace at the end of the day. Like those three things, but people think they're going to find it in a person.
Right.
Like, oh man, I'm missing all these components.
Right.
Then we go down to the rabbit hole of self-love. But I'm missing all these components. So let me see if I can find joy, peace, and love in a person.
Right. But let this person fill my cup up so much. I need them. Like, but then that causes the codependency and the external validation.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. Is just like, something my wife was talking about, taking a road trip with some girls. So I'm going to Mexico at the end of this month on a little retreat in the jungle with some other movers like me. And anyways, and I know exactly why. It's not Mexico, and it is the people, but my wife was like, I think we're going to go to Florida. I was like, well, everybody's going to Florida. Why do you want to go to Florida? Oh, it's warm. I was like, well, something you should ask yourself. And something I asked my kids, and she was like, you're right. And she's like, wherever you go, I had somebody talking to me about, oh, I need to plan the honeymoon, but I don't know where to go. I was like, quit thinking about where and think about what. And like, huh? And it's like, think about like what you want to feel, what you want to do, how you want to feel during and after. Like, think about the feeling and the emotions as opposed to a place. Because you'll choose a place most likely on vacation because, oh, somebody else went there or somebody told you it was a cool place to go. But is that really where you wanted to go? And like, so take the place, right? Like, is it? So I figure you could relate to this. Like, take the place out of it and put the feeling into it. And so, like, when we go on all these hikes and these ventures, it's not like thinking, oh my God, that hike's going to be hard and high and take forever. We're going to sweat and we're going to eat a bunch of granola bars and whatever. It's like, what do we want to feel? Well, for me, I love to move. So laying on the beach isn't my cup of tea. Right. Maybe for some. But I want to connect. I want to bond over easy and hard. I want to see different things in one day. Like you can do that on like, even here in the Adirondacks, piking up 4,000 or 5,000 feet, you'll see so many different things. Animals, trees, birds, sights, sounds, like, so.
That's a rich experience.
Right? So that's where I'm at. So like next time, there's your challenge. I don't always have a challenge on here, but I sometimes do. There's your challenge. Like next time you want to go somewhere, don't think I want to go there think why or how and what you want to feel and the experience and the emotions.
That's really good. Even that dissects some of the things you...
Was that deep? Was that on your...
I love it, because it'll dissect into why we're doing what we're doing. So for what purpose do we want to go on a trip? Are we escaping? Are we forgetting about our life? Are we disassociating? And that's okay. There's times and places, everything in balance. Yeah. But what I mean, what you got a good point is like, for what purpose do I want to do this? And then in that space, you can start to find it, maybe perhaps carve out a couple minutes of your time to walk through the garden for 10 minutes. Like, again, creating the possibility of finding some value in this conversation, which I think there's a lot. It's a rich conversation.
Man, we give them a lot to take their life a step further.
It's beautiful. And it's like
we're going to do part 2.
Yeah, right. And like the growth and comfort thing's huge, but also finding the peace and the joy in life. And then, what do they say? If you really love your life, do you have to have something to escape to? Not that you guys are talking about escapism, but what I'm saying is you're finding the purpose.
People go to vacation to feel relaxed and to find joy because their life is stressful. How many times do people come back even more tired and exhausted? I see it here because I get people back from vacation. They seem more tired and exhausted when they're supposed to relax.
Should be filling their cup up.
Right? So it's just something to think about. So
I like that.
Yeah, but I want one thing before we end here, because we're going to wrap it up here soon. It's just like, there's something that it's always stuck with me. And somebody said, like, he's got the Kung Fu, he's got the acupuncture, he's got the Chiro. Like, all three of those are connected. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
Explain.
Yeah. So what I see too, and it was like, as I was sharing before, I was basically starting my career as a chiropractor, and I knew I'd have to be physically strong, right? It takes a lot of physicality to move and adjust and manipulate the body. But I also started training in Kung Fu, and I got the mental effect, but I also got relaxed, and so I got to be a little more chill. And then what I realized is every day I'm doing my Qigong. I've been doing it, like, it's about 10 years now. Every single day, Qigong is like yoga. You're just constantly connecting into your body, moving. It's the basis of our Kung Fu. So what we find is that motion is essentially kind of a central core of all of it. Chiropractic, for example, might want musculoskeletal, sort of physical, anatomical motion, right? We know that when our body's moving and open and flowing, we have the best function. And then I started looking into, why did I feel so good after Kung Fu? Like, what was this? And so I started really learning that there's channels that run up and down the body, and when we open and flow and connect into those, same way that yoga does, you're bringing blood and oxygen into the area, you're going to basically allow the body to heal better. So I was finding in my Kung Fu training that I was practicing traditional Chinese medicine. So I was like, I think I want to learn more about why they choose these points. I could have basically learned how to just drop needles for a couple 100-hour course, but I was like, no, I want to get the masters. I want to know why they chose this. And so that's what happened. And then what I see in the context of acupuncture is internal energetic motion. So there might be stuff blocked internally, perhaps from the traumas of the youth, perhaps from stuff we just store in our body from, day-to-day use and activities. But the central theme between all of them is a good question. What I see is it's motion. We want to move the body. We want to move the internal energetics. Anytime, people are always curious, when you drop a needle into acupuncture, it doesn't feel like a nurse's needle. They're about, you can fit 50 acupuncture needles inside of a nurse's needle. But you're bringing blood and oxygen to the area. As long as you're alive, your body's going to have a response. So what we're doing is moving internal nutrients. So we want motion in the body, we want motion internally with our flow of our body and our systems, and then we also want to just make sure our mind and body are connected and then moving together well in the Kung Fu sense.
Yeah, connection, blood. I mean, that's what I practice here from a strength and conditioning.
Of course.
Again, I do more dynamics type stretching and movements again because that's my niche, and I can totally rely on that. But something that he said, I don't know if it was when we first met, but very early on in our relationship was, he's like, I can kill people, I can help people with similar pressure points, and that just totally intrigued you, and so you want to dive deeper. And if you weren't listening,
I can show, if I may borrow this.
He's going to break my arm and then fix it. No.
So this is a radial head adjustment. Ready? Right there. This is a Kung Fu arm break.
Right.
So they look similar.
And then you could put some acupuncture needles.
Yeah, we drop the needles in. So
in similar points. I think that's so fascinating, man.
It's all blent in. Yeah, all blent in. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I'll put some of his contact information in the show notes below. So if you want to reach out to him, I have a feeling we should do some videos too. Like, I have a YouTube channel, man. This has got my brain thinking. So hopefully you'll see more of us together, actually. But if you enjoyed this, obviously, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. We got tons of stuff on there we get, but before we go out here, we cover so much, you don't feel you have to, because this was pretty interesting and deep. We've been talking for about an hour or so. Anything else you'd like to add to the listeners, to the viewers, that you think that you just wanted to mention to bring their life a step further?
Yeah, a step further. That's brilliant. So what I would share is find a way to move. Like find that movement, and find someone like Justin who can honor your own body and know what's good for you. And having someone with that masterful mindset to say this is probably appropriate for you and this isn't. But getting something that's naturally moved. One of the things I'll leave with is just there are people that have adjusted full-on chiropractic adjustments, which are very gentle and not scary. Everyone thinks they're scary. But they're not, there was someone that was 4 or 5 people that were above 95 that I've been able to full-on treat, full-on. And they've done one thing in common, all 5 of them. They walked religiously twice a day, 30 minutes. No less.
That's so neat.
They would journal about it too, which it keeps the mind engaged at 95.
Yeah, journaling. So journaling, movement, strength training, especially like strength conditioning. Like for example, agility ladder. You're starting to see it in some of these elderly classes. Obviously,
so cool
because all this like movement keeps the mind growing, keeps it challenging. Lifting weights. And when I say lifting weights, I mean in a more functional state. Again, if you stick to the same routine day in, day out, you're not really growing. But if you do more functional training, so you mix between kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells, slam balls, tires, maces, you use a different variety of equipment. Of course, I'll talk about progressive programming and structured program. But anyway, the point is, like, if you move on these, you're still channeling movement, you're enjoying it, you're having fun. You know, there's a reason why you'll see a 95-year-old who's can do pull-ups or chin-ups or still walking. You know, they've done a number of studies on these. Again, I'm always going back to yoga and strength conditioning, not to say don't bike ride or do these other things, but just add some of these components into it, because the one thing is your bones and your muscles decrease as you age, so you need to stimulate them, and cardio is not always going to do that. So that's going to be my 2 cents on the strength conditioning. Definitely. And then one other thing, you know, add the couple off of that message is and, you know, not just moving, is like they've done a study on these where they've taken like older people, you know, in walkers and, you know, different health concerns, and your typical, like, I think they were like 80 plus or something. And they put them in a more childlike and playful area, like the music to the paint on the walls or the activities in the room. And guess what happened after, like, I think 2 months time, 2 or 3 months, all these people are like, they were all moving better. Some were off their walkers. Some people were like, I think this was done like 25 years. It was done like in the 70s or 80s. And they, like, their internal, like, stuff that they examine, I think, like, you know, blood pressure, cholesterol, stuff like, So basically, I mean, one could guesstimate based off all these that their longevity was increased just based off of changing their environment. So anyways, I think we're going to wrap it up there, but that just keep that in mind on like who you surround yourself around with, what you surround yourself around with. And again, it's the who and the what, not the where and the thing and the stuff that's going to help create that joy. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to say you got to love yourself before you can love others truly and fully. So just keep that in mind. You know, I know this guy loves himself, but we're always a work in progress. I love myself, but it's always a work in progress. And it's not arrogant to say that. So this is one step further. This is my buddy John. Again, thank you for checking out this episode. And you know, you're going to see more of this guy because I really enjoyed this today. And again, thanks for tuning in another episode of One Step Further. Take care. Hey, stud! Wow. No, I'm not going to be like that. Hey, this is Justin Arnold back with another episode of One Step Further. This is a podcast. It is faith-based, and we're talking about a little bit of everything, but anything to provide your life to move a step further, whether it be personally, professionally, or spiritually. And I brought in my good guest, John Crawford. He's got a huge penis. And why don't you tell us a little?
It's true. It's everything you heard is true.
All right, so that's probably how you're going to talk. Okay, cool.
Go ahead and talk.
Yeah, sure. Testing. 1, 2, down low. Voice or all the way up here, up high. Testing. 1.
Yeah, so, yeah. So I figure if I'm moving.